Money Radio, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get together with Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com and talk about real estate. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Laura Bramnick is an attorney, a real estate attorney, also a consumer advocate, and also a real estate agent. She helps represent people on residential and commercial real estate, also land transactions. She can help put together a concrete plan. Now, Laura holds an active Arizona real estate license. She's been a real estate investor, worked in the mortgage industry, also a certified instructor with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, and as I mentioned, a real estate attorney as well. So, real estate license and a real estate attorney. Great combination. And I'm going to talk with you about that today, because I think it's very important that we understand representation in a transaction. TalkRealEstateAZ.com if you'd like to find out more. That's the website, TalkRealEstateAZ.com, and the phone number 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705. Laura, we were chatting ahead of time, and you mentioned to me that a lot of times now people are going online, they see a house, or maybe they drive by and they see a sign.
Right.
They call and say, I'd like to take a look at the property.
Yeah. There's a lot more information out there. And it used to be that you used to get access to homes listed on the MLS, you used to have to call an agent because it was limited. Now with the internet, it's not that limited.
So you call, you talk to the listing agent, and they show you the property.
Yeah, you call and you say, I'm interested in this house, and you have no idea that you may be bound in some way to use that agent, because if the listing agent shows you the house and you want to make an offer, then you can hire your own agent, but that agent can't get the commission from the sale.
But if you don't hire your own agent, then you're working with the listing agent, who obviously represents the seller.
Yes, the listing agent represents the seller, but if the listing agent shows you the property, they have what they call procuring cause. They procured the buyer.
So a lot of times, and I know this happens, you have one agent representing both the seller and the buyer.
Yes, and that causes problems.
It sounds like a conflict of interest from the very beginning. How do you dance with two people at one time?
Exactly. It's definitely a conflict of interest. But it is permitted under Arizona's real estate rules and regulations. It's called limited dual agency. Now, if you have your own agent, they owe you certain duties, specifically confidentiality and fiduciary responsibility, meaning that you can discuss with them certain scenarios and they can give you advice, and you can tell them what you want disclosed and not disclosed.
Right.
And that's the way it normally works when you're represented by a lawyer, by a realtor.
Confidentiality is real important when you start getting into negotiations.
Yes, because maybe you overheard the seller and his wife talking about something that they really didn't want you to hear, but you're discussing with your agent, can I use that information to make a lower offer? Or, I talked to the neighbor. There's all kinds of scenarios that come up that you hire an agent because this is all they do. So if they're experienced, they can really guide you to a successful transaction.
And really it raises the question of, where does their fiduciary duty rest if they represent both buyer and seller?
Now, and it's even more difficult for the seller, because here the seller's hired them to list the house and find a buyer. And now a buyer comes in without an agent, and all of a sudden the seller goes from having someone who has confidentiality with them, who represents only them, to now sharing their agent with the buyer. And now they've lost their ability to go to that agent and discuss it in a confidential way. Now, that can be fixed. In other words, the buyer can get their own agent and they can pay their own agent to represent them.
Okay.
And that way there's no dual agency, or the listing agent can agree that the buyer can get their own agent and share the commission. So the real issue is here the money. In other words, the listing agent who shows the buyer gets the entire commission.
So if you're working with an agent as a buyer,
Yes.
and you see something just by chance
Right.
on the internet or driving by, and you contact that listing agent, you want to let them know up front that you are working with an agent.
Correct, that's correct. And so you just want to be aware, because it's very important to have your own representative.
Particularly
Your
as you
own
get into
advocate.
negotiations,
Yes.
you start getting into ideas of contingencies and other things that you need to put into that contract.
That's correct. And, now many times you don't have your own lender, so you're dealing with a lender and title company that the agent has a relationship with, which is a good thing. I mean, because I even, in my work, I use certain agents, mortgage companies, and title companies that I prefer.
Sure.
Because I've worked with them a lot, and they will give me excellent service and, prompt and all those types of things.
You know that you're working with good people.
Exactly. And if there's a problem, I know that they can help me resolve it. So the problem becomes when you don't have your own advocate. And there's situations in real estate where you are on a different page. It's not only price. It can be when you want to close, what the contingencies are, what inspections you need, and in terms of whether you should have a co-buyer, whether you're going to buy it on your own, whether you're going to buy it in an LLC. I mean, there's so many issues that are involved, and then if there's an issue with maybe you think the seller didn't disclose everything, how do you deal with it? If your inspector comes up with something that it seems like the seller should have known about, like a
Right.
leak or mold or, termites, something like that.
This is why when I introduce you, when we get together, I mentioned that you're a real estate lawyer, you're a real estate agent, but I also say you are a consumer advocate, and that is an important role in the real estate transaction. It truly is.
Yeah, it is important even though sometimes a buyer will think they can save money by not having their own agent, it's really worth the money. It's really worth it to have your own representative, unless you're very, very savvy in the real estate business yourself.
If you have questions about this, contact Laura, 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705, talkrealestateaz.com. talkrealestateaz.com, Laura Bramnick, 480-624-2705. Laura, as always, great info. Thank you.
Great to be here, Sinclair.